Welcome to Layers with Larry. I'm Larry. These are all my layers. Well, welcome back everybody. Welcome back to Layers with Larry. This is part 2 of our Halloween and geology related special. And just a brief recap from part 1 to remind you of our story so far. We've talked a lot about hot springs and their origin and how they relate in ancient times and even modern times into beliefs of spirits of the underworld associated with hot springs. And what we're going to delve into a little more today is the cave aspects. I mentioned how when the hot water moves through the rock, especially through limestone, it dissolves it away and leaves caverns in its place. And so it makes caves. So the next logical thing to do is talk a little bit about caves, and particularly how caves have played a role in certain beliefs or superstitions, perhaps, of demons and goblins and ghouls and bad stuff that comes out of the ground. So let's get into that a little bit. Now, last time we focused on mainly one hot spring close to Cody. That was the Damaris Hot Springs. And there's actually more hot springs as you go west up the canyon. There's 3 more actually. We'll talk a little bit about one of them. It's one that's just a little bit east of Hayden Arch. So you may have seen it along the side of the river there on the north side. Often has stones and a ring around where it's located to make a little pool for people to go and swim in if they like. And that one's, of course, down at the water level, which is where the water is coming out of the ground from that layer. And it's actually connected to a cave, so that's why it's together with this video. The cave I'm talking about is the one all of you who are around Cody know is called Spirit Mountain Cavern, because it's up on the top of Spirit Mountain, which is also called Cedar Mountain, but Buffalo Bill and I believe the Native Americans referred to it as Spirit Mountain, so clearly they held some special reverence for the place. But when it was discovered in 1906 by I believe the great-grandfather of an employee here at the museum, his name is Mac Frost, and in 1906 he was tracking down a wildcat of some sort. He tracked it along and eventually ran into this opening in the ground and explored it and reported back to folks, and they all got excited. And even Buffalo Bill found out about it. Of course, he got very excited as well. And it was initially called Frost Cave, named for the discoverer. But it later became known as Spirit Mountain Cavern. Wonder if there are spirits up there. So there's a connection between Spirit Mountain Cavern and Needle Springs, way down at the bottom of the canyon. Folks that have explored the cave really to a great extent have found that the cave system winds its way down and around and eventually ends up associated with the Needle Springs. So at one time, the whole canyon was covered with sediments up to, well, even beyond the height of the current mountains that are there. And the hot springs found their way up to that surface originally, and that's what dissolved out Spirit Mountain Cavern. Now we don't see water in there because the water is coming out at the level of the river, and the river's like 2,000 feet lower than it used to be. Now, I've never heard anybody refer to the Spirit Mountain Cavern as being a place where spirits dwell, but if they do, or if they did, what sort of spirits might they be? Good spirits? Evil spirits? There's a place in Ireland called Oignat Cave, and it's a place called Rathcogan, Ireland. It's the northern part of Ireland, where there's a cave, and although it's not called Spirit Cave, it's been believed for thousands of years that the place is loaded with spirits, and not very nice ones, pretty evil spirits, in fact, and they only come out at certain times of the year. The Irish, originally the Irish people were people called the Celts that existed before the Romans came to Great Britain and to Ireland area. And they were pagans, so they believed in many kinds of gods and goddesses, just like the folks in the last video we did on ancient beliefs about hot springs. They were pastoral people, they were agricultural people, they raised sheep, and they had a celebration on October 31st, and it was called the Shaman festival, which at October 31st, the ancient Celts believed that the spirits would come out of the cave. They called it Hell Cave. And the spirits would come out and they'd mess with the living and cause you trouble, hurt you, drag you back in the cave with them. So they believed that if they dressed up like the demons that they feared from the cave and wandered around their normal lives but dressed up like demons, that would keep the demons in the cave. And one thing they also did to keep those demons at bay and keep them in the cave was they made offerings, food and goodies, candy maybe of the sort, to keep them in the cave, keep them out of their lives. Another way to scare them away, since they're demons and ghouls of the dark cave where there's no light of any kind, they must fear the light, right? So they would light fires on the hillsides and in the fields in an effort to scare the demons back into the hell cave from which they came. So Larry, you ask, what's all this hell cave stuff in 2,000 years ago got to do with Halloween today? Well, think about what I just mentioned. Dressing up like goblins and ghouls and demons of sorts and wandering around. Well, those are the good guys. You gotta thank those kids out there. They're out there maybe keeping the real demons away. And just in case there are real demons out there, you gotta have something to appease them, something to offer them, right? And they like their Kit Kats and their Baby Ruths, so you gotta give them up. And just in case those bad demons come to your door, you gotta light that fire out there. The Irish came here in the early 1800s, and they get in trouble for lighting fires in the fields and on the hills, but those handy pumpkins could be carved into the shape of ghouls and demons that could scare away real ghouls and demons. And a little fire inside would certainly scare away those demons who are afraid of the light. So it sounds a lot like modern Halloween to me, which in fact is what we believe that this tradition of Hell Cave and the early Irish immigrants to our country brought with them, and we still celebrate today. So it's very reasonable to expect that for thousands of years and even today, people find caves to be mysterious and spooky and otherworldly. You walk from the land of the light and the living world of plants and animals, and you go down into a cave and you find kind of weird stuff. I mean, things like this. This is actually dripstone from a cave. I believe this is from a cave in Mexico. This one, I believe, would have been at the top of the cave. As the groundwater seeps through the rock and eventually encounters the space of a cavern, that mineral-rich water drips from the ceiling, and as it does, it evaporates a little bit. It causes the minerals in solution to get a little more concentrated, and they precipitate out, just like the way travertine does. And this is sort of a form of travertine. It's a little pure. It's made of tiny little crystals. It's known as aragonite. And you can see how when the little drips of fluid came down, they formed these points. Given enough time, you can imagine as they drip to the cave floor, they do the same thing there and start building up a mound of material. Eventually, they actually connect together into a sort of a column. This we call a stalagtite. The ones down here are called stalagmites. The way I remember which one's which is stalactite has a T in it, and T is on the top. So that's a stalactite. That would be a stalagmite. So very odd things that you don't see out on the world, out in the normal world. Therefore must be associated with things that are otherworldly. So not surprising that people would associate those mysterious places with gods and goddesses and deities of the underworld. So I hope you enjoyed this little visit into the history and connection to the modern day and celebrations or customs that we have today, where they come from, why we still celebrate them. Because on October 31st, I remember Spirit Mountain's right up there, and maybe you've been safe from those demons and ghouls all these years just because you put out that pumpkin out in front of your house with that fire in there to keep the bad guys away. And your neighborhood kids dressed up like those ghouls and goblins in order to scare the real bad guys back in the cave. So do your part. enjoy your celebration.